What's up everyone, it's Kate here at Marvelous Videos, and today we look at the top 15 vampire comedy movies of all time. And welcome back to another thrilling video with Marvelous Videos. Today we are about to meet a very popular subgenre of horror films. Horror fans have always loved a good story about blood-sucking vampires. Their stories have always been around in cinema to scare the audiences nearly to death. And as gory as vampires have always been, we also got to see a lot of wonderful comedic vampires, who have actually managed to change the narrative quite a bit. When horror and comedy get together, it definitely makes all the horror fans laugh till they scream, both with fear as well as with the hilarious jokes. Ever since we saw Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein in the cinemas in 1948, the vampire comedy genre has only gone uphill. We have seen some of the greatest vampire comedies, including Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 1992, Vampire's Kiss in 1998, and Freaks of Nature in 2015, and so many more. Well, without any more waiting, let us dive right in and see what are the top greatest 15 vampire comedy movies that you can sit and watch on a chilly night full of laughter and screams. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. What We Do in the Shadows 2014. Who doesn't know the genius of Taika Waititi from the amazing Marvel movies and so many other reputed works he's done? Well, first up on the list we have for you a special Taika Waititi brilliance, a movie that sure made quite the buzz. What We Do in the Shadows was released back in 2014, and it gave the fans just what they needed. A good vampire comedy about vampire roommates. You wouldn't have thought that a feature mockumentary about 4 vampire roommates could last on its own, but What We Do in the Shadows does just that and so much more. It's clever, even more humorous, and an amazingly smart imitation of reality television. Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement's darkly hilarious film seems somewhat like a sitcom. It tells the story of 4 vampires, Peter, Viago, Vladislav, and Deacon, who live together in a flat in Wellington, New Zealand. Jackie is the only human they trust with their secret. She tries to have her ex-boyfriend Nick killed by her vampire friends one day, but unfortunately, he's only injured and then transforms into a vampire. So the original vampires decide to include Nick and his human friend Stu in their group. But Nick ends up getting Peter killed due to his silly mistakes. And so of course the originals disband Nick from the group. While attending a supernatural masquerade ball with other creatures like werewolves and witches, the 3 roommates find out that Nick has turned Jackie into a vampire. And then the chaos happens when everyone in the ball finds out that they also have some human guests, Stu and his friends. A whole lot of drama takes place throughout the film. This exciting and humorous New Zealand film is a must-watch for anyone who enjoys their comedy as dark as a vampire's living room. The Lost Boys 1987. Next up on the list is one of the vampire comedy classics from the 1980s, one of the first major critical and commercial successes of the director Joel Schumacher. The Lost Boys, which released in 1987, was received with a lot of praise by the audience. Just like the 1980s take on the vampires, this film has a lot of funky haircuts and goth music. The story begins when Mike and Sam, 2 brothers who are forced to move to Santa Carla, California, with their divorcee mother Lucy, and it looks like they're moving into the murder capital of the world. Mike soon falls in with the wrong crowd of bikers because of a girl called Star. Now when Sam hears rumors about vampires in the city, he doesn't take it seriously. But then he meets 2 vampire hunters, so it must be real after all. The supposed biker gang is actually made up of vampires who interestingly decide to turn Mike into one of them. Without knowing what he's done, Mike goes to Sam for help because he doesn't want to become a vampire. Of course, no ordinary teenager would want to be a blood-sucking creature.
Look, you're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire.
So, with the help of 2 vampire hunters, they decide to turn Mike back to human by killing the head vampire. And finding him obviously turns out to be quite the adventure that none of them were expecting. The film is full of gruesome deaths, stakes through hearts, blood spraying everywhere, and a lot of chaotic energy. With all the horror of a vampire city involved, the 2 Corys, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, definitely gives us the comic relief we needed. The incredible cast and fun plot sure make up for a good watch of comedic horror. Buffy the Vampire Slayer 1992. The epic vampire comedy, which is neither too serious nor too heavy, is the right amount of fun that we need it to be. Released early in 1992, Buffy the Vampire Slayer went on to become a TV series as well, which is pretty exciting. Written by Joss Whedon and directed by Fran Rubel-Kuzui, this film stirs up a rom-com in a completely different direction. You know how there's always that one head cheerleader in rom-coms whom pretty much everybody hates at first? Well, in this film, that is the very same person who can actually save everyone from certain danger. The blonde and bouncy Buffy Summers lives a life that every girl dreams of. The famous cheerleader dating the captain of the baseball team and obviously loves to shop. While her world turns upside down when a strange man, Merrick, with superpowers comes to town to tell her that she's been chosen by fate to slay vampires and protect the world.
Bravo.
Now we see our fame queen in action, who slowly does get abandoned by her best friends. But that's when she finds herself getting close to the town outcast, Pike. She trains to achieve her destiny just when terror lurks around the corner. So now, Buffy and Pike together have to fight the force of Lothos, an old and powerful vampire king who won't go down without a fight. The amazing star cast of course makes it irresistible not to watch the film. With Christy Swanson as Buffy and Luke Perry as Mike, the film makes for a pretty good light watch with some vamp terror and lots of comedy. And to surprise the horror fans, the TV series adaptation that the film had ended up going for 7 seasons, so they definitely did not want the laughs to end. Once Bitten, 1985. Who doesn't know Jim Carrey's genius from so many wonderful movies he's given us? Right from playing amazing roles like the animal detective in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective to the Riddler in Batman Forever. Well, if you're a true Jim Carrey fan, you most certainly know him from some of his earlier comedy movies in the 1980s, one of which being the brilliant vampire rom-com from 1985 called Once Bitten. A vampire countess who is about 400 years old wants to preserve her beauty. If she doesn't want to look old and grumpy, she has to drink the blood of a virgin guy 3 times before Halloween.
To have the virgin blood of a young man, not once, but 3 times before All Hallows Eve.
Living in Los Angeles, the film has made it pretty obvious how difficult it is to find a virgin there. With Halloween just around the corner, it looks like luck is on her side. She ends up meeting Mike Kendall in a bar in Hollywood.
Hello, tall, dark, and handsome.
And guess what? Just like his 2 other friends, Russ and Jamie, he's a virgin. On the other hand, it doesn't look like Mark is so lucky because he ends up at a vampire's house. And by the way, Mark's girlfriend Robin has no idea about what's going on. She wanted to wait, so of course she thinks Mark respects her decision, but who knows. After the Countess has drunk Mark's blood twice, there comes a major twist in the film.
Can I have one of those uncooked ones?
Robin brings a surprise with her right before Halloween, which has ruined the 3rd and final drink for the Countess. Well, Jim Carrey of course does it again with this comedy. How could a film not be great if it stars Jim Carrey, right? With the direction muscle of Howard Storm, Once Bitten is one of the most loved classic vampire comedies. It drove the fans nuts. Fright Night 1985. If you, as a horror fan, have ever wondered what you look like while watching horror movies, you will definitely find that out after watching Fright Night. This movie is so relatable on so many levels to every vampire fan who has always had the fantasy of actually meeting a vampire. It's directed by the incredible Tom Holland, who we have all loved from his work on the 1983 sequel to the classic Alfred Hitchcock film Psycho. Well, the movie is all about a teenager hunting his vampire neighbor. A 17-year-old Charlie Brewster loves a horror TV show called Fright Night, which is hosted by Peter Vincent, who used to be a vampire hunter in a movie role. So when Charlie finds out that his new neighbor Jerry is an actual vampire, he goes above and beyond to prove it to the police and even his girlfriend Amy. Now, of course, none of them would believe him.
Hello, Charlie.
And Jerry, being our not-so-friendly neighborhood vampire, tries to kill Charlie. He obviously then goes to Peter for his help as a vampire hunter. Still keeping the same tone, even he doesn't believe Charlie at first. But when he finds it out for himself, he is dead scared of going up against something so real. Just what you want to hear from a vampire hunter, right? He soon gathers the courage, and both Charlie and Peter try to kill Jerry before dawn, so that they can save Amy, who is bit by him. Fright Night has one twist after another throughout the night. Pretty perfect title, actually. Well, the film isn't disappointing in the least. In fact, it keeps you on the edge and also ends with an excellent twist for a sequel. And who doesn't want to keep watching more about a film that made them go crazy with excitement?
Henry, you...
Netherbeast Inc, 2007. You might think that those telephone companies where no one knows what is happening and nobody even cares might be some drug dealing den. Well, Netherbeast Inc is not a film that goes in that direction. It follows an office comedy about a telephone company. Oh, and guess what the otherwise normal company? It's actually run by vampires. Turner Claymore, who has been in charge for decades, is kind of the head vampire of the organization Vamps. Surprisingly, he has started showing signs of the vampire equivalent of dementia. Now that's something you definitely haven't seen before. He's careless and forgets things, which leads to a lot of mistakes and also some very strange decisions. He's begun killing his staff, the other vampires. Otto, the right-hand man, starts finding bodies with a wooden stake through the heart, so the boss really has gone insane. But apart from the killing spree, one of Turner's most risky decisions is hiring humans to work for Vamps. Steven, an efficiency expert, is the first human to walk through the door, and soon a lot of humans begin to roam the halls. This, of course, turns out to be a double threat for the vampire majority. Not only is the presence of humans making them thirstier, but they are also at risk of being discovered if any of their new human colleagues take notice.
Managerial positions open. And I would appreciate it.
Directed by Dean Matthew Ronalds, Netherbeast Inc is full of laughs as well as a lot of truly gruesome scenes. It's gonna make for one of your favourite mixes of horror and comedy. With a wonderful cast, Dean definitely brings a new twist to the vampire comedy storyline. Who could have expected that an experienced, aged vampire could ever actually lose his cool? Dracula, Dead and Loving It, 1995. Next up on the list we have an amazing gothic horror comedy film which is directed by Mel Brooks and stars Leslie Nielsen. It's a parody of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula and some of the films based on it. So, solicitor Thomas Renfield travels from London to Transylvania because Count Dracula is about to purchase Carfax Abbey in England.
The spirit of goodness will shield you from the lurking danger.
And of course, our strange, charming vampire is the Count Dracula. He casts a hypnotic spell on Renfield, turning him to his slave.
Scheduled to meet Count Dracula.
Dracula!
Dracula! Dracula!
Now, after reaching England, Dracula meets his new neighbours. Dr. Seward, a psychiatrist, his daughter Mina, Jonathan Harker, her fiancé, and Lucy. When Seward notices strange marks on Lucy's neck the next day, he calls Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, who informs Seward that she has been attacked by a vampire. Of course, like any other sane man, Seward doesn't believe him. Now Mina is Dracula's next victim, but he wants her to be his undead bride for all eternity. He takes her to Carfax Abbey where they dance while he sucks her blood. The very next day, Van Helsing becomes suspicious of Mina's odd behaviour, and he clearly finds the same marks on Mina's neck. So, Van Helsing comes up with a plan to find out who this vampire is, and now Count Dracula is no longer safe. He locks himself in a room to complete the process of making Mina his bride. But then Van Helsing and Seward break in and we have the major vampire versus human fight. Now, we wouldn't have much of an interesting ending if after Dracula's dead body was sealed inside the coffin, he didn't just whisper a few words in thin air. Dracula definitely does love being dead.
I didn't see anything! I didn't see anything!
I saw everything.
There's a lot of comedy in the film with the duo of the director Mel Brooks and the great actor of the Naked Gun trilogy, Leslie Nielsen. You will want to keep laughing with terror of Dracula. Freaks of Nature 2015. Did you ever think you would one day watch vampires, humans, and zombies fighting each other? Well, if that is a fight you've always wanted to see, Freaks of Nature brings everything and so much more for you. There is an alien invasion saga in this film, a zombie thriller, vampire romance, and even some high school drama. This Robbie Pickering's film has a lot of scares and equal amounts of laughter. You might want to consider this a whole package of rom-com, horror, and comedy. In Freaks of Nature, we are living in a different world in Dilford, where everything was peaceful and business as usual 3 days ago. The vampires, zombies, and humans are all living peacefully. It was like vampires were the head of the department, zombies were, let's say, at the bottom, and humans were in the middle, getting along just fine. A high school kid, Dag, has some trouble fitting in with the crowd. He accidentally ends up hurting Ned's brother during practice. Now, Ned is somewhat of a social outcast at high school, and he isn't respected anywhere, be it at home or his school. So he lets a female zombie bite him in the leg, which turns him into a zombie as well. And now he doesn't have to worry about his problems. Another social outcast, Petra, has feelings for the high school's playboy vampire Milan, and she lets him turn her into a vampire. Now the natural balance of the town gets totally destroyed when the alien apocalypse came in Dilford and ended all kinds of peace between these townspeople. They think that the vampires, zombies, and humans are attacking each other, and now it's an all-out mortal combat between them. So the aliens are after a chemical present in the town, and Dag, Petra, and Ned try to come up with the best way in which they can save the town. This film really captures it all. A human who is later found out to be a werewolf, a vampire and a zombie teaming up together and fighting off aliens. That's almost a superhero kind of movie. It's equally satisfying to watch all the chaos, fights, and the fun it brings.
You see, I know I am. I'm a vampire. I can prove it.
Vampire's Kiss, 1989. Directed by Robert Bierman and written by Joseph Minion, Vampire's Kiss is an epic vampire comedy film that stars Nicolas Cage. Now that is an actor who you want to see becoming a vampire. He definitely gave audiences his craziest performance in this film. He plays the role of Peter Lowe, a literary agent who is slowly losing his mind over the things that take place in the film. We see his failing mental health from the start, based on the things he talks to his therapist about. After an encounter with a bat, he feels aroused by it, which is pretty strange. At a nightclub, he meets Rachel, who he takes home. But when they're making out, he notices her vampire-like fangs. He's surprised the next day when he doesn't find any bite marks on his neck. Lowe cuts his neck while shaving and put a bandage on the spot, thinking that is where the vampire bite mark is. Well, things just keep taking a turn from here. He slowly stops seeing his reflection in the mirror and thinks he is sensitive to sunlight. Oh, but of course the audience can see him in the mirror. He ends up going to nightclubs and trying to bite and drink the blood of women. In the middle of his whole insane episode, he also molests his secretary, and all the while he thinks that he's doing these things with Rachel. It's as if he sees her in every girl. So he's pretty sure at this point that he's a vampire, but it seems only the audience knows the truth. Vampire's Kiss has all the dramatics and gory bloody scenes of a vampire movie, and the dynamic acting of Nicolas Cage goes above and beyond to show us what a true comedy this film is. It definitely offers a lot of entertainment to horror fans. Vamps 2012. Who doesn't remember watching Sex and the City? Well, now think about Vampires in the City. Vamps is directed by Amy Heckerling, and it definitely changes our view of how vampires could be living their lives. Two vampires living in New York, Stacy and Goody, turned by a vampire named Cicerus. Goody was turned in 1841 and Stacy in the early 1990s, so that is definitely a huge gap. Well, Goody helps out Stacy with her transformation into becoming a vampire, and the two of them create a great friendship. Now Goody starts seeing her ex-boyfriend Danny, under the false pretense of her being her own daughter.
My name is Susan, but my mother's name was Goody. Did you know her?
Goody Rutherford?
But Danny soon realizes the truth about her immortality. She admits that she loved him but ended the relationship because he deserved to create a life with someone less complex. In the meantime, Stacy has found her own man, Joey, a college student. Well, unfortunately, Joey happens to be the son of Dr. Van Helsing, a vampire slayer. Joey soon finds that Stacy is a vampire, but they decide to keep dating. And guess what? Stacy becomes pregnant. But the real twist in her life comes when she finds out that the baby won't survive, unless Stacy goes back to being a human again. So by now, we all know that the only way for a vampire to turn back into a human is for the source of that vampire to die. And Goody knows that very well. Goody understands that the only way for a vampire's stem to die is to become human. They both decide to track down Cicerus and change back to humanity. When the time finally comes, Goody and Stacy are brought back to their actual ages. Now of course, Goody, who has hidden her real age, comes to realize that her remaining time will be limited. The whole story moves like a rom-com, but also not so much because of the endless laughs. Goody's beautiful backstory takes your breath away, and even though she is no longer immortal, Stacy makes sure that Goody's memory will live on. After a lot of gory detailed films, Vamps has a rather light comic and terrific plot.
We're vampires.
Suck, 2009. You definitely haven't seen a more unique plot than Suck, a pretty great rock and roll vampire comedy written and directed by Rob Stefanik. It follows the fortunes of The Winners, a failed rock band as they move ahead on a North American tour. What looks like a major setback is that one of the band members, bassist Jennifer, has been turned into a vampire after going home with a fan. But as it turns out, the band's popularity grows as a result of Jennifer's revived appearance. Well, let's not celebrate just yet, because not all of the band's new fans have good motives. Eddie Van Helsing, the infamous vampire hunter, has learned of Jennifer's condition and she is his next target. But while each member of the band has been turned into a vampire,
Sick in the sun.
We didn't feed.
Feed? Feed?
it seems exciting for some members of the band and their fan base is growing fast, but there is still some concern. Joey, one of the band members, becomes fed up with the specifics of being a vampire and talks to Jennifer about changing back into a human. So now they are looking for Queenie, the stem vampire, in order to kill him to revert back. Well, a fight breaks out between Queenie, Jennifer and Joey, and that kind of ends in Queenie trying to stab Eddie. But he ends up being stabbed by Joey. And now that Queenie is dead, all of the band members are returned to their human forms. But it looks like it doesn't end there for Jennifer and Joey. They meet a strange man in a bar who tells them that they can be even more powerful than they were before. Well, it looks like they are on their way to make a deal with the devil. With its incredible cast, Suck is a very refreshing rock and roll vampire film. It also has some pretty great hilarious moments covered in between all the chaos of the band. Therapy for a Vampire 2014. If you never thought you would get to see a vampire going for therapy because of his 500-year-old marriage problems, well, now's your chance. Therapy for a Vampire is an Austrian horror comedy film which was released in 2014. It was written and directed by David Room. It has all of the life problems of a married couple who happen to be two vampires. Of course, it could get difficult to maintain a marriage for centuries. The film is set in 1932, Vienna, Austria. Professor Sigmund Freud starts to provide psychological therapy to Count Giza von Kosnum, who is a frustrated vampire and unhappy with his thousands of years of marriage. Countess Elsa von Kosnum, Giza's wife, is obviously also a vampire, and she desperately wants to admire herself by finding out how she looks. But it's very difficult for her since she cannot see a reflection in a mirror. She's also having bad luck with getting a portrait painted of herself. So, the therapist, Freud, helps her by asking his assistant Victor to paint her portrait. Now, a lot of romance takes place. Giza finds himself admiring Lucy, Victor's girlfriend, because she looks like his long-lost lover, Nadia, who was executed centuries ago. After Elsa hires Victor to paint her portrait, Giza tries to cast a spell upon Lucy so that he can bring back Nadia. But Elsa sees all of this and of course she's angry. She bites Lucy but fails to kill her immediately. And now we see Lucy transforming into a vampire. Inyaz, Giza's assistant, tries to help her by transfusing blood, but that only brings back her humanity for a short while. A lot of shocking things happen. Elsa kills herself trying to attack Giza, and towards the end, the unimaginable happens. It looks like Freud was bit by Lucy, so now even he is turning into a vampire. The comic elements in the film have been shown extremely well, and all in all, the film is a good fun ride. Frostbite 2006. The film tells the story of Saga, a Swedish girl who is a party lover, and just like any other teenager, she has a habit to party all night. Her mother, Dr. Annika, makes the decision for them to move further north to Lapland in order to work with the best geneticist, Dr. Beckett. Saga now makes a new friend in the form of the hard partying goth, Vega. When Saga and Vega go to a party, it quickly gets out of hand. Vega had brought some drugs from a medical student named Sebastian, but it looks like the result wasn't what they expected. Rather than the usual buzz, all of the people at the party turn into vampires. Now the rage has really gone up and the scene has turned into a bloodbath. After Annika finds out, she ends up killing Becca out of anger. But as it turns out, she has also become a victim of vampirism. Saga is trying to save herself by hiding in the basement, but Vega finds her. She kills Vega with a garden gnome because obviously she didn't want to die herself. So then the police show up and Saga is taken away in an ambulance to not get caught. However, Saga is then shocked when she realizes that she knows the woman who is driving the ambulance. Only now the woman has scary demonic scarlet eyes, the kind that vampires have. A Swedish vampire comedy film whose plot proceeds like nothing you would have expected. Frostbite also has a lot of mystery when Saga meets another girl in the ambulance called Maria, and it looks like they're going to be sisters. Directed by Anders Bank, Frostbite is everything you want to see in a vampire comedy and so much more. My Best Friend is a Vampire, 1987. Next up on the list we have another classic American comedy horror film which was directed by Jimmy Huston.
Go away. Come on, open up. I'm not gonna hurt you.
The story revolves around a vampire who is trying to be one of the good guys, and not the demonic bad vampires we have always known. Jeremy Capello is a typical American teenager trying to fit in with the rest of the crowd. His life is completely changed after he meets a woman named Nora. Thinking he's about to lose his virginity, he goes ahead with her, but she ends up biting him in the neck. Now he doesn't know what's happening to him, but a guy who has been watching him, Modoc, tells him that he is now a vampire. He tries hard to adjust to his new vampire life, but it seems kind of difficult. The girl he always wanted to impress, Darla, seems interested in him now, but he's still having trouble with his vampire abilities. To add to all the problems, he finds out that two vampire hunters, McCarthy and Grimstyke, kidnap his friend Ralph thinking he's a vampire.
They're crazy. They're vampire hunters. They think my friend's a vampire. They've kidnapped him and they're going to kill him.
So Jeremy and Darla try to save Ralph when surprisingly they are assisted by Modoc and Nora, who are supposed to be dead. And in order to turn an enemy into a friend, they turn McCarthy into a vampire as well.
Grimstyke? Don't let them take me away, Grimstyke! Don't let them take me away! Grimstyke, help me!
The film beautifully captures everything from the late 1980s and it's a classic teen comedy. It's light-hearted with a plot that isn't too hard to follow, so it makes for an excellent fun evening watch.
With your mother and your grandmother.
Love at First Bite, 1979. The characters in the film were originally created by Bram Stoker. Stan Dragotti directed the film, and what a wonderful job he did with it. Love at First Bite is written by Robert Kaufman. It tells the story of the infamous vampire Count Dracula, who is expelled from his castle by the communist government of Romania. He then goes to New York City with his servant Renfield.
Trampolines, parallel bars, swings, and Nadia Kamenich,
where he comes across a model named Cindy Sondheim. He is immediately attracted towards her because he thinks that she's a reincarnation of his one true love, Mina Harker. Unfortunately, Cindy's boyfriend, who is a psychiatrist, Jeffrey Rosenberg, finds out about Dracula and he is hell-bent on killing him. As it turns out, Jeffrey is the grandson of Dracula's very old nemesis, Fritz Van Helsing. Well, now, with a string of attempts, Jeffrey tries his best to harm Dracula by trying to burn his coffin or shooting him with silver bullets, but nothing works. He gets locked up for his irrational and strange behavior. Dracula seems to be enjoying everything that New York City has to offer, from the blood banks to the sex clubs. This ends up being bad for him, because NYPD Lieutenant Ferguson realizes that Jeffrey was right, and this is actually a vampire. So when Dracula and Cindy decide to flee the country, Jeffrey and Ferguson are after them. And in the middle of all this chaos, Cindy finally agrees to become Dracula's vampire bride. Jeffrey once again fails to kill Dracula with a stake, as it gets caught up in his cape and Dracula and Cindy turn into bats and fly away. Now that is what you call an interesting turn of events. Looks like it definitely was love at first bite for Dracula and Cindy. What a rom-com lifestyle for Dracula. The film stars George Hamilton as Count Dracula and Susan St. James as Cindy Sondheim. Their incredible chemistry on screen makes the film even more fun to watch for the audience. A truly excellent vampire comedy movie in every essence. Well, with that, we come to the end of another amazing video. We hope you enjoyed watching it. Make sure to drop a like and hit subscribe on your way out. Until then, stay safe and have a great day.